This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Otelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. New flooding in Taiwan as a barrier lake overflows following a drenching from Tropical Storm Fung-Wong. At least 2 dead and 18 injured after a truck plowed into pedestrians at a busy outdoor market in Bucheon near Seoul. Several remain in critical condition. China and Europe open their annual talks in Brussels as they mark half a century of ties and aim to tackle trade strains, AI, and sustainability as both look to reset relations. A Chinese internet search pioneer Baidu unveiling new AI chips and an updated version of its flagship Ernie large language model in a bid to keep up with market leaders.
In 2026 should be a good blend of positive optimism, particularly because it's luxury hospitality where the Peninsula hotels operate.
Confidence from Benjamin Vuchot of Hong Kong and Shanghai hotels as Asia-Pacific branches post encouraging results. Plus, Taiwan's aging population is reshaping the workforce. We'll look at how retirees are stepping back into jobs to fill a growing labor gap. Tropical Storm Fung-wong bringing more intense rain and flooding to parts of Taiwan after making landfall last night in southern Pingtung County. It has since weakened into a low-pressure area east of the island. Authorities warning of continued rains, including in the capital Taipei, as well as a risk of landslides in mountainous areas. 95 people have been injured, and around 8,300 were evacuated from coastal and mountainous areas ahead of Fung-wong's arrival. Schools and offices have now reopened around the island following 2 days of closures. Well, meantime, Mingli village in eastern Hualien County has been one of the hardest hit areas. A new barrier lake, which recently appeared on Matayan Creek, has overflowed and flooded the nearby area. Authorities say the lake formed after the right bank of the original collapsed, causing debris to flow downstream and dam the creek. Hualien County is still reeling from a typhoon that struck in September, which left 18 people dead. For more, CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen joins us live from Taipei. Victoria, what's the latest in terms of cleanup efforts around the island?
Well, the cleanup after Fung-wong is huge, especially in northeast. One of the worst hit areas is Seoul in Yilan, where the flooding was so intense that water reached up to 1 story high. Thousands of homes were flooded. When the water finally went down, people found their living rooms full of mud, cars pushed into the sides of buildings, and shops completely soaked. Many families are now throwing out damaged furniture and trying to clean up their homes as fast as they can. Rescue teams have also been pumping water out of low-lying streets nonstop. Some roads in Seoul are still covered in thick mud, so heavy machines are out there scraping it off before trucks can get in. Now, across Yilan and Hualien, troops are deployed to clear debris and deliver food and water. Power companies are also working around the clock. At one point, thousands of households had no electricity. Most are now back online. And Premier Zhuo Rongtai has promised that the government would do everything it can to support affected families. He also asked local officials to speed up damage assessments so compensations can be released sooner. Now, engineers are still checking riverbanks, bridges, and slopes that took a beating from the storm. Now, officials warn that the next couple of days remain risky because the ground is unstable and more rain can trigger landslides. So while the storm has passed, the cleanup, especially in places like Seoul, is only just starting, and it could take weeks before life returns to normal.
All right, many thanks for that report. Victoria Jen reporting to us live from Taipei. Now, at least 2 people have died and 18 others injured after a truck crashed into pedestrians at an outdoor market in South Korea. The incident happened in Bucheon City, southwest of Seoul, at about 11 a.m. local time. The two killed were both women in their 70s. 9 are in critical or urgent condition, and 9 others needed non-urgent medical help. According to eyewitnesses, the truck had initially reversed some 30 meters before ploughing 150 meters forward, hitting pedestrians in the way. Police say the driver was detained at the scene and that he was not under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The driver says his vehicle had malfunctioned, while officials say they are reviewing security camera footage. China and Europe have opened their annual forum on trade and cooperation in Brussels. This year, the gathering is also celebrating 50 years of diplomatic ties. Well, China is the EU's third largest trading partner after the US and the United Kingdom. Both have sought to find ways to minimize the impact of Donald Trump's tariff policy. In this year's Europe-China Forum, discussions will revolve around fresh cooperation in light of economic challenges due to current global and geopolitical events. And there will also be talks on sustainable development, security, as well as AI and EVs, as covered under the existing EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. Well, for more insights into this, we are joined by Will Denslow covering this story for CNA from Brussels. So, will trade ties between EU and China have grown increasingly tense in recent years amid Brussels' de-risking strategy towards Beijing? So, can today's forum actually help rebuild trust and find common ground between EU and China?
Well, the message from some officials at this event has been that despite some of these headwinds that you mentioned, there has been signs of increased economic growth, suggesting that as far as trade volumes are concerned for this year, compared to last year, already growth in the region of around 3%. So promising signs in that respect. But you mentioned those headwinds, especially when it comes to these huge trade tensions, especially the export of these critical raw materials, rare earths. Well, the message we heard from China's ambassador to the EU says that because there are different political systems, differences in the EU and China's approach to the world stage, he said that this is reason that there should be further collaboration and not competition. He said that there is certainly no reason that the two sides should be enemies and that the two should work closer and closer together. But of course, there are these continuing issues, especially when it comes to trade differences. And we're seeing this played out in some metrics. The China Chamber of Commerce to the European Union earlier this week released a report suggesting, according to Chinese enterprises they've surveyed, that over 80% of them operating here in Europe have expressed heightened levels of unpredictability, uncertainty. However, there's still confidence from many of these firms that they will continue to invest. So that really gives a sense of the trade relationship, some of the concerns that have been discussed. But ultimately, as far as both EU and Chinese officials here are concerned, they say there are plenty of areas for greater cooperation, especially issues such as climate.
And not to mention that the EU also laying out its plans to crack down on cheap Chinese parcels entering the bloc. Do you think this could pose as a sticking point in discussions in Brussels?
Telly, this reporting initially from the Financial Times suggesting that finance ministers as early as this week will be pushed towards trying to include this duty on small packages coming from China to the bloc as early as next year, several years earlier than previously intended. That, some officials say, is an intent to try and help with competitiveness and concerns about cheap goods flooding the European market. Essentially, we can expect a strong reaction from Chinese businesses, Chinese business leaders that have warned against any such protectionist measures as they've cited in the past. So this certainly is another example of the complications in this relationship at a time where the two sides are marking 50 years of diplomatic ties.
Well, many thanks for that report. Will Denslow covering this story for CNA from Brussels. Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi to retract remarks she made on Taiwan, as it warned that Japan must, quote, bear all consequences. This is the latest in the almost week-long spat between Beijing and Tokyo, sparked by a comment Ms. Takaichi made in Parliament last week. Well, she said on Friday that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could amount to what she calls a survival-threatening situation and in turn potentially trigger a military response by Japan. Well, in the past days, Chinese state media has criticized the Japanese leader in commentaries. Well, Tokyo protested against a Chinese diplomat's violent threat over Ms. Takaichi's remarks. The leader has since said that she would refrain from making such statements or other comments again, with Tokyo urging for efforts to ease the ongoing friction. Our break's up next, but coming up on East Asia Tonight, a check on how financial markets are doing following the end of the longest U.S. government shutdown in history. Plus, a Japanese lender reportedly looking to make a comeback just months after it repaid its debt, dating back to the Asian financial crisis of the 1990s. Hello there, you're watching East Asia Tonight, and you're just in time for business news with Roland Lim. And today we're talking about China's internet pioneer stepping up its AI game, apparently, with its latest model.
Yes, at their annual tech event, Baidu is setting the stage to highlight China's innovation and its push for AI self-sufficiency. China's internet search pioneer unveiling an updated version of its artificial intelligence flagship model in a display aimed to show that Baidu is keeping up with leaders in the field. The company pitting its Ernie 5.0 model against rivals like DeepSeek, Gemini, and OpenAI's GPT-5 at its annual Baidu World Technology Conference. Although Ernie did not have the highest scores most of the time in tests on language, audio, and visual understanding, Baidu sought to demonstrate its efforts to compete in the AI sector. The Chinese firm also revealing two new AI semiconductors at the event, named M100 and M300. They will be available for sale from 2026 and 2027, respectively. The chips are aimed at providing powerful, low-cost and controllable AI computing power to support China's self-sufficiency efforts. Their specifications have yet to be disclosed. At the event, founder Robin Li also addressed ongoing worries about an AI bubble. Mr. Li did not name companies, but called out what he deemed as, quote, unhealthy, unsustainable structures, where chip makers reap the most benefits of AI rather than app developers. Baidu has been placing its bets on AI to drive its future growth, but it is under mounting pressure from a deluge of open source models like DeepSeek and AI native apps. Its revenue in the previous quarter dropped to its lowest in about 3 years due to fierce competition. Baidu will be releasing its third quarter results next week. Let's check in on the Greater China markets, which ended in the green Shanghai Composite, ending the day 0.73% higher. Shenzhen did better, 1.8%, thanks to new energy stocks that led the gainers. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index climbing for the fourth straight session. Investors also on earnings watch with two tech titans reporting today. Now, JD.com has topped market expectations with its third quarter results. The e-commerce giant posted a 14.9% on-year increase in revenue. It largely benefited from steady consumer spending on its platforms thanks to government subsidies and lower prices. JD.com's stocks in Hong Kong ending the day in the red, down by 0.25%. US-listed shares in pre-market trade, though, it is up more than 5%. And after the market close, well, Tencent reported a better-than-expected 19% growth in the third quarter versus a projection of 5%. Shares in Hong Kong, though, before the results were out, down by 0.15%. Investors are set to scrutinize upcoming earnings from China's leading tech companies for signs of how aggressively they're embracing AI and the scale of their spending plans. Hamza Ayub from Faro Capital talks us through their potential strategies to ride the AI boom.
So tech is all about productivity, right? So China and US are taking a very different approach. So we saw in US, the earnings season has been robust. Earning beats 80%, more than 80 companies beat earnings. In China also, earning growth was not bad, around 11% so far. Next year, everybody expects an acceleration, especially in China, led by tech. We know right now there are two corners of the market. One is the new economy, which is a digital economy, which is tech, which is 30 to 40, 50% of earning growth. And then we have the old economy. Similarly, in a way, China is taking a different approach, right? We have seen from a top-down more supports toward the private sector, and the policymakers have realized for China to grow out of its debt and economic woes, they have to let private sector grow. And tech is one of the main sources of total factor productivity. Going forward, the market is getting more and more confident, and investors are seeing that Chinese tech, big tech companies can perform in terms of earnings and productivity the same way that US tech has. So writing was on the wall, but overall, we remain also very bullish at Faro Capital when it comes to the Chinese big tech.
Japanese lender SBI Shinsei Bank is reportedly aiming to go public in what could be one of the country's biggest listings this year. The lender is looking to sell some $2.4 billion worth of shares, a move that would give the bank a market value of around $6.5 billion. SBI Shinsei Bank was delisted 2 years ago as parent SBI Holdings sought to repay the outstanding debt the bank owed to the Japanese government. The troubled lender, then known as Long-Term Credit Bank of Japan, received a 370 billion yen lifeline back in the 90s after the country's bubble economy popped. That's around $2.4 billion in today's exchange rate. The sum was only fully repaid a few months ago. The relisting will mark a comeback for the lender, as analysts say the timing is right in Japan for a bank listing after the country's financial stocks performance this year. Japan's wholesale prices rose more than expected last month amid stubbornly high cost of rice and food. The producer price index rose 2.7% in October, beating market forecasts by 0.2 percentage points. The figures are likely to place pressure on the central bank to resume rate hikes as early as December. Analysts, however, say they expect wholesale inflation to slow if Prime Minister Takaichi's plans to lower utility prices gets the green light. Now, Ms. Takaichi's cabinet expected to announce a stimulus package this month. The Japanese premier has signaled an expansionary fiscal policy, which on the flip side has placed pressure on the Japanese yen, making imports more expensive and maintaining upward pressure on inflation. Now, markets in Asia ending mostly higher after President Trump signed a funding bill into law. His actions effectively ending the longest federal government shutdown in the nation's history. The Nikkei 225 in Tokyo ending the day 0.4% higher. In Seoul, the Kospi index is up 0.5%. Investors' attention now turning to the U.S. Federal Reserve's outlook. Following Washington's reopening, gold has been rallying partly on expectations of further rate cuts when the government returns to work, although the White House has flagged that official jobs and inflation data for October are unlikely to be released. Now, the data void during the shutdown had caused investors to either fly blind or rely on private statistics. Gold currently up in Asian trade by 0.82%, 4,232.89 per ounce. Meanwhile, futures tied to the U.S. indices is currently looking mixed. Dow Jones futures is currently flat at 48,373. S&P 500 is down 0.16%. Simon Marks has been covering this story for CNA from Washington, D.C. Now, he explains what it takes for the country to return to normal now that the shutdown has ended.
A lot of things will snap back to normal very quickly. I mean, hundreds of thousands of federal government workers who have been furloughed and who have now missed over a month of pay will immediately return to work in their various government departments. And President Trump has agreed that thousands of civil servants that he fired, not furloughed, but he dispensed with their services when the shutdown began. That was another pressure point on Democrats. They are going to be rehired. They'll be back in their jobs, food nutritional assistance payments, which of course created so much angst and pressure on Democrats over the weekend when they were not delivered in their entirety to America's poorest residents. Those will resume immediately. Flights, though, are another issue. First of all, it's going to take a few days for things to return to normal, but the Transportation Department here is indicating tonight things may not return to normal. They say they are extending the current cutbacks in the number of flights at 40 airports all over the country. We do not know for how long, but that may be because more broadly than this government shutdown, there has been a paucity of air traffic controllers available for many airports all over the country. So how long that travel disruption is going to continue tonight is a very open question.
Hong Kong and Shanghai Hotels CEO Benjamin Bucheon says he's cautiously optimistic on the 2026 luxury demand, with Japan and Southeast Asia leading the way. Now, Bucheon, who runs the Peninsula Hotels portfolio, adds that Greater China is stabilizing on improving Hong Kong and Shanghai occupancy. Now, I caught up with him earlier and started out by asking which cities were the group's biggest growth engines.
We're very fortunate that despite, the number of hotels limited to 12 hotels for the Peninsula Hotels, we are quite well balanced from a geographical perspective. 50% are in Asia Pacific, but the growth that we're seeing particularly strong at the moment is coming from our 3 hotels in Europe. We've recently opened the Peninsula London, the Peninsula also in Istanbul, as well as the Peninsula in Paris, which celebrates 10 years. And those 3 hotels are seeing a very, very strong interest from a range of geographies, the US market and also the Middle East market. And it's very timely for me to be, having this conversation with you in Riyadh here. I'm here for the first edition of Tourize, which is a fantastic initiative generated by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And this market, Saudi Arabia and the rest of the GCC region, is actually contributing to a lot of the growth that we're seeing in our 12 hotels around the world.
What's your outlook for the luxury hotel market in Asia Pacific as we're already nearly entering 2026? And do you have any targets for room revenue efficiency, margins?
We're actually cautiously optimistic about the outlook for luxury hospitality. Particularly, we have very, very strong and encouraging results coming from Tokyo and the Japanese market. While Greater China, we have 3 hotels, one in Beijing, one in Shanghai, and one, of course, the Peninsula, Hong Kong. We are seeing a bit more moderate growth in this market due to the lack of full recovery since 2018. But the Southeast Asia hotels, which we have the Peninsula in Manila and the Peninsula in Bangkok, are seeing a very, very robust performance this year. And I think 2026 should be a good blend of positive optimism, particularly because it's luxury hospitality where the Peninsula hotels operate.
This decline that you've seen in revenues in some markets, like you say, mainland China and Hong Kong, that's compounded by economic headwinds and to a certain extent geopolitics as well. Do you see activity picking up anytime soon?
We actually do. I think there's a few green shots that we're observing. If I look at the Shanghai market, for instance, and this is corroborated also with luxury retail, which is my background that I have before I joined the Peninsula Hotels. We do see a little bit more interest in the luxury consumers in staying in our hotels, and definitely in Hong Kong, particularly about the last 3 months, we're seeing a much, much better than expected recovery of the market. I think the Hong Kong market is gaining a lot more.
And maintaining brand differentiation. I mean, all 12 Peninsulas has earned that prestigious Michelin key hotel recognition. And beyond that, though, I mean, going past the key signature experience or service innovations, what will it take, do you think, to win first-time luxury guests over from your rival chains?
I think we need to go beyond the 4 walls of a hotel room to create an unbelievable and memorable experience for our guests. The best compliment that you can receive from a guest staying at the Peninsula is that they don't talk about whether the room was beautiful, whether the restaurant was exciting. Is that they'll talk to you about the experiences, about the moments they created, about the interactions they had with our teams, or the people that they met, whether it's in the lobby in here in Hong Kong or or in our Chinese restaurant in Beijing. I think those moments is what differentiates us from the hardware of what a luxury hotel can be.
And that's all for business. Otelli, back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Roland. Well, on that note, we're going to go for a break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, we'll be looking at how labor shortages in Taiwan are forcing companies to rethink who they hire. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Floods, landslides, and widespread damage. Taiwan cleans up after tropical storm Fung-Wong swept across the island. Tragedy in South Korea after a truck plowed through a busy market in Bucheon. 2 people reported dead, 18 others injured, as police investigate a possible vehicle malfunction. China and Europe mark 50 years of diplomatic ties, opening their annual forum in Brussels to discuss trade, technology, and global challenges. Now, Taiwan is bracing for 2 retirement waves in the coming years. In less than 2 decades, more than 6 million people will reach the mandatory retirement age of 65, a shift that's sounding alarm bells for experts and officials. But some companies are already rethinking what aging and work really mean. CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen with this report.
牛肉火腿、生菜沙拉、左凯撒酱，谢谢，请慢用。
At 68, Jeremy Huang is still serving up dishes, alongside colleagues less than half his age. A former restaurant owner, he's now a waiter at one of Taiwan's largest restaurant chains.
很简单的一句话讲，就是做一个有价值的人。什么是有价值的人？就是活到老学到老。在体力上，我想是基本上是不是太大的问题，因为我每天还是有保持持续的骑越野单车的这个运动，所以我反而觉得说，我来上班的时候，我就把它当成是一个在锻炼我自己身体的一个很好的一个机会。
Mr. Huang is part of a growing number of retirees returning to work as Taiwan's labor shortage worsens. The island is expected to lose nearly 6.7 million working-age people in 2 retirement waves. The first began in 2023, when baby boomers started leaving the workforce. The next, Generation X, will follow in about 16 years.
过去餐饮业其实都是喜欢用年轻的劳动力啊，那随着这个少子化、高龄化，其实年轻的劳动力越来越少。
Taiwan's low birth rate has made hiring tougher. Many young people are spending longer in school, delaying their entry into the workforce. Better-paying tech jobs and flexible gig work have also become more attractive options. So WellPrime is turning to older workers instead.
我们其实比较明确的会是针对中高龄的伙伴，就是他们的工作的时间、工作的强度的部分，都会做一些内容上面的调整。他可能是应该要做3天，要休息2天，再做3天，那他会保持一个很好的状态。
Employment among those of retirement age has risen by about a third over the past decade. But analysts say more businesses will need to adapt, offering flexible hours, lighter workload, and more senior-friendly environments. Currently, only 10% of those aged 65 and above still work, and that's a rate lower than other aging societies, including South Korea, Singapore, and Japan. About 110,000 people are retiring in Taiwan each year, a record high that's straining the labor market.
所以在这里呢，除了中高龄之外呢，事实上女性的劳动力，或是我们讲的一些我们台湾的新住民、原住民其实都是未来的劳动力供给。所以对企业端来讲，其实企业端可能未来的劳动力的运用上面，也可能就是我们讲的需要有更多多元的一种雇用。
For companies like WellPrime, making seniors part of their long-term plans required a mindset shift.
65岁这件事情是一个危机吗？其实同时也是一个转机。我们看到这一群劳动力，未来更多的一个可能性。所以这个我觉得是让我们的企业的环境更友善。那未来的话就能够更接纳这一群的工作年龄的伙伴加入我们。
For Mr. Huang, that opportunity is about more than work.
我基本上没有设限自己要做到几岁。好，我觉得如果我还能动，我会持续不断的保持身体健康、快乐生活，然后快乐工作。
And in an aging society, that may be exactly what's needed to keep the economy and its people moving forward.
Well, I've got CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen herself joining us once again from Taipei. So, Vic, we are seeing more older people saying that they want to keep working after retirement age. It's not a bad thing. But aside from what we saw in your story, what are the other reasons behind that shift?
That's right. Retirement doesn't mean the same thing it used to. You'll find very different views on the street. One man we spoke to told us very honestly, and here's what he had to say.
我不会想要继续工作，我会直接想要退休。那我因为工作做到65岁，其实说实在，其实也等于是走了大半生了。那我后面的日子，我觉得说我想要去体验一下我以前没有办法有时间去体验的事情，甚至去旅行，这样子。
Now, for him, retirement means freedom. Time to finally enjoy life after decades of hard work. But others see it differently. And this is what another person told us.
会啊，我会想要继续工作，因为我觉得但是会先休息一些时间，不会马上工作。那我觉得工作可以让人生比较有目标，然后可以接触不同的人事物，会增加自己的网络人际网络。然后生活也会比较开心。
So it's not just about money. It's about staying connected, having purpose, and keeping mentally and physically active. Right now, only around 10% of people over 65 are still working, far lower than Japan and South Korea. But with longer life expectancy and rising costs of living, more Taiwanese are open to working part-time or finding flexible jobs, even after retirement.
But Victoria, the workforce still already shrinking. What more can Taiwan do in the short to medium term to cushion this impact?
Well, there's certainly no silver bullet, but there are some realistic steps that Taiwan can take right now, according to some analysts. One is to bring more people back into the workforce, and that means making it easier for seniors to keep working, offering flexible or part-time jobs, and improving childcare so more women can stay in or return to work. Now, Taiwan has some of the lowest female participation rates after age 30, and that's a lot of talent going untapped. Second is boosting productivity. With fewer workers, every worker has to produce more, and that's where automation, AI, and digitalization come in. Taiwan's tech sector is well positioned to lead here, especially in semiconductors and smart manufacturing. Third is immigration, allowing more skilled professionals or even easing the way for migrant workers in sectors like healthcare and caregiving could fill critical gaps. But that will require political will and better integration policies. Now, these measures won't fully solve the democratic crunch, but taken together, they can help Taiwan slow the labor shortfall, sustain growth, and buy time for longer-term changes like raising the birth rate to take effect.
And especially with the mentality, 活到老学到老. I like that one. You live as long and you keep learning. Well, thank you so very much for that report, CNA's senior correspondent Victoria Jen from Taipei. Now, in other news, a Malaysian rapper Wee Meng Chi, better known as Namewee, has been released on police bail pending the completion of an autopsy report. Well, his release marks the latest development in the murder investigation of Taiwanese influencer Iris Xie Yuxin. CNA senior correspondent Melissa Go has this report.
A controversial Malaysian rapper, Namewee, has just spent some 9 days at this lockup of the district police station in Dan Wangi right behind me to assist probe into the death of 31-year-old Taiwanese influencer Iris Xie. Now, her body was found in a 5-star residential suite in downtown Kuala Lumpur on October 22nd. Now, Namewee, who was present at that time in the room, has maintained his innocence and pledged to extend his full cooperation to the police. Now, he's currently out on police bail for 2 weeks pending the full autopsy report. Now, Namewee, who's accompanied by his lawyer, Joshua Tay, is expected to present himself back here at the police station on November 26. Now, the Attorney General, Muhammad Dusuki Mokhtar, says there isn't enough evidence right now to charge him or link him directly to the death of Iris Xie. Now, as top prosecutor, he has ordered the police to continue with their investigation. Now, the police had reclassified her case from one of sudden death to murder. Now, her body is still at the KL General Hospital and hasn't been released to the family as police investigation is still ongoing. Now, the Kuala Lumpur City Police Chief said they will be resubmitting the investigative paper to the AGC, or the Attorney General's chambers, after the autopsy report is out. Now, Namewee's passport, meanwhile, hasn't been surrendered to the police. Now, he's promised that he wouldn't flee. Now, Namewee has posted bail for 2 other drug-related offences. Now, he's charged with previously, and his friend has signed the bond to guarantee his return to the police station at any time to assist in the murder probe. Melissa Goh, CNA, Kuala Lumpur.
Coming up next on East Asia tonight, police in Japan are now allowed to use rifles to kill bears after a record number of deadly attacks forced an unprecedented change to the nation's strict gun laws. Plus, art meets technology in Kyoto. Team Lab's latest exhibition promises immersive, shape-shifting installations that aim to challenge everything you know about experiencing art. Well, in Japan, police are now officially authorized to shoot and kill bears using rifles following a spike in deadly encounters. Well, the new rules took effect today, expanding police rifle use beyond crimes like hijackings. Well, according to the Environment Ministry, bear attacks have killed 13 people since April, the highest toll on record. And more than 200 attacks have been reported in the same period. Special police firearms units are being deployed to hard-hit areas in northeastern Japan, including Iwate and Akita prefectures. Now, each prefecture will have 2 teams, including snipers and emergency coordinators. Under earlier changes, municipalities could commission hunters for emergency bear shootings. Until now, the police relied on evacuating local residents, securing the surrounding areas, and patrolling school routes. Authorities are also encouraging retired police and military personnel to get hunting licenses. Now, for more, we are joined now by CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida in Tokyo. Mitch, firstly, the significance of police force being able to use rifles. Tell us how big a deal this is.
Well, according to the Dai Nihon Ryoyu-kai, which oversees members, hunters with license nationwide, records 150,000 of them. But many of them actually do not hunt, it says. Even if members hunt, they are not keen to be involved in shooting dangerous wild animals and risk their own lives. And they're also aging. And how much they can earn from hunting is not appealing either. Now, I heard a town in Hokkaido, northern Japan, has offered less than $70 a day to a hunter. And this low allowance has raised eyebrows. So today, many towns and cities have decided to raise their offers as culling bears has become a life or death issue. And a record 13 had died from bear attacks this year, according to the Environment Ministry. It's the most ever in a year. Now, local authorities have started to turn to police and self-defense force for help. A police corps dealing with ammunitions in Akita and Iwate prefectures were trained by veteran licensed hunters to understand the behavior of bears and use appropriate rifles and they started their new duty this Thursday. And several cases of bear-related incidents are reported daily somewhere in Japan. Just on Thursday, a bear was witnessed on the runway of Iwate Hamanaki Airport, causing delays to flight. And also on the same day, after a bear was witnessed on a university campus in Miyagi Prefecture, students and faculty members were told to seek refuge inside until the bear was gone. Now, there have been recent incidents of not only human incidents, but pet dogs captured by bears and never found.
So, Mitch, you mentioned seeking refuge inside, but that's provided, there is a building. So if let's say you come face to face with a bear, how are you going to protect yourself from one? And what kind of tools would you need, to protect yourself?
Well, everybody is trying to buy anti-bear spray made with ingredients from chili peppers, and they're selling fast. I actually went to 3 outdoor shops in central Tokyo today, and 2 of them said they received limited amounts of shipment, but sold out as soon as they were on the shelves. There are bells and whistles on sale, too, to counter bears with very loud sounds. One shop had a stock, but another said all products were sold out. And it's not only the local Japanese people buying them. A salesperson told me foreign tourists are buying such products too to go hiking. You see, it's a great time to go hiking in Japan to enjoy the autumn colors, but also you have to be aware of bears. And a friend living in Nagano told me he recently witnessed a cub eating berries in the middle of the road, and it's in an area bears are not usually witnessed. Also, experts warn there are lots of fake videos out there on social media, and not to be fooled by them.
Okay, well, Mitch, I do have some leftover pepper spray. If you do need it, let me know. I'll send it over. Thank you so very much, CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida.
Okay, thanks a lot.
From Tokyo. Now, more than 500,000 South Koreans have just finished the College Scholastic Ability Test, also known as Sunang, often referred to as the test of a lifetime. The 9-hour marathon began this morning. And this year, the number of test takers increased by 6% compared to last year, making up the biggest cohort in 7 years. The Education Ministry says the jump is largely due to most test takers being born in 2007. Well, that was the auspicious year of the golden pig, which prompted a mini baby boom. For South Koreans, Sunang isn't just the end of a decade of cram schools and late-night study sessions. A top score is widely viewed as the first step toward a good university, a solid career, and even down the line, a comfortable retirement. Well, that's why parents and even the government pull out all the stops to help.
지금 거의 20년 동안 계속 어떻게 보면 이게 목표이기도 하고 다시 시작이 되는데 지금까지 많이 공부하고 힘들고 했었는데 오늘 본인의 이제 노력했던 거를 최대한 잘 실력 발휘해서 좋은 데가 있었으면 좋겠습니다.
오늘 아침에 애기 데려다 주고 왔는데요. 경찰관분도 다 나와 계시고 교통통제도 다 되시고 그러니까 그렇게 해주실 줄은 몰랐거든요. 저희가 첫 아이인데 정말 최선을 다해서 해주신 것 같아요. 그러니까 저희 나라만 그런지 모르겠지만 좀 외국인들이 봤을 땐 과하다 싶을 정도로 아주 잘 해주시는 것 같아요. 제 생각에.
To ensure students perform their best, rush hour was staggered. Extra buses and subways rolled out. Police escorted those who are running late, and flights were even grounded during the English listening section so the exam takers could focus. Results will be out on 5th December. Now, how much would you be willing to pay for an Hermes Birkin bag? For one buyer, it's a whopping record $10 million. Well, the bag was revealed to the media in Tokyo by a Japanese company that buys and sells second-hand luxury goods. It won the Birkin at a Sotheby's auction in Paris earlier this year. But before one calls it overpriced, this bag has significance. It was custom-made for actress Jane Birkin back in the 1980s and has since become an era-defining design of the 20th century. According to fashion law, the Franco-British actress sat next to Hermes executive Jean-Louis Dumas on a flight. where she told him she needed a stylish yet functional bag as a young mother, with space for baby bottles. Well, Mr. Dumas made a sketch immediately, and the concept for the first bag was born.
私たちはやはり物を価格で語るのではなくて、ブランドの哲学とかそういう価値観も含めたストーリーで語られる、つまり意味で語られるものに変えたいというふうに思って今ビジネスをやっているので、そういった意味では私たちが伝えたいそこの象徴となるような存在がこのバーキンであったっていうのが答えになります。
For now, Valuance has no plans to make a profit from this iconic original. Before the company begins exhibiting this bag around the world, it will first be shown to the public at one of its stores in the trendy shopping district in Tokyo's Omotesando. Now, staying in Japan, an immersive art space in Kyoto is offering visitors new experiences aimed at blurring the boundary between the observer and the artwork itself. Well, at Team Lab's BioVortex Kyoto exhibition, some 50 immersive digital artworks are showcased in a space spanning some 10,000 square meters. Team Lab is traditionally known for blending art with technology and nature, as seen in their Tokyo and Osaka museums. But they are trying something different this time in Kyoto.
彫刻と一体となったり、境界面が曖昧だったり、中空に浮き上がったり、そういうような何か今までに人類が作ってきた、物質的な物体とは常識の違うような体験になっていると思うし、今まで人間が思っていた認識を拡張するような、そういう体験に、そういう作品になっていると思います。
Well, this permanent museum is the group's latest and largest. Since Team Lab's founding more than 2 decades ago, it expanded its collections beyond Japan, from New York to Singapore. Just last year, Team Lab Planets in Tokyo set the Guinness World Record for the world's most visited museum for a dedicated art group. Some 2.5 million people went to that museum in its 2023 fiscal year.
I went to a couple other team labs, one in Tokyo, 2 in Tokyo actually, 1 in Osaka. And I didn't feel a lot of stuff with fragrance. And I felt that in this team labs, it immersed me more than just my eyes.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for your company.